do your research on her. She's actually really fun to learn about. Um, so, I wanted to actually discuss today. Um, the title of this video is My Virginity Was Not For Sale. In my experience, I left off with um, middle school years. So I wanted to go a little bit into high school years, um, which is, where the title comes into play. Um, so for me, I got to, my ninth grade year, sophomore year, and, I had really good grades in school. I struggled with math a little bit. Um, Aside from, having always having a few racist teachers here and there that I had to deal with. Uh, One situation, which I'll have to tell you guys about another time. Um, Racism in the most blatantest of forms, the most blatant of forms, I received from a drama school teacher, which I'll go into another time. There were always situations like that where my parents would have to come to the school, um, have a meeting with the principal and the teacher. It was crazy. It was more blatant than anything I had seen in New Jersey or in Sumter growing up. But anywho, um, as I made it into my my year 16, um, I vividly remember um, actually, yeah, 16. I was going into my junior year. Um, Before I went into that school year, during the summertime, um, with my church, well, not a church, but with my place of worship, we would go to like the different communities where, they're kind of um, poverty stricken, and we'd bring like plates of food, we'd bring like um, papers with information on it, you know, um, tell them about like, when we're gonna have like, cookout or yard sale, different things of that nature. And we we would always go like to the local stores in the area. So we went to the barbershop in that area. And I remember my mother, she's there with me, and some of the others. Um, she's, handing the man, I guess he was the owner of the barbershop, some of the information. And I want to apologize also because I know my voice is like really low. And that's because I'm not feeling like I have a little cold, so I'm not feeling the best. Um, my children brought it home from school and gave it to me. So there you have it. But back to the story. The guy, he's like, oh, so, you know, do y'all know? I'm just gonna say Sarah. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that as her name. Um, and we're like, yeah, we know Sarah. My mother's like, she's one of the members, at our congregation. So he's like, y'all do. I'm kind of confused standing there. I'm 16, so I'm standing there a little confused, and I don't know what it is that Sarah does that he's referring to. But I remember having like kind of like a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, like um, whatever Sarah does, it may not be good. Um, so my mother asked him, well, what does Sarah do? You know, what are you talking about? So the guy was like, Sarah, she's slept with all of us. Um, and it's known around town that she does, you know, sex. Um, at that point, I'm in a state of shock because I know what he's saying, I know what he's talking about, but it's like, really? Like, it's, I'm in a state of shock. Um, so he's like, she's always sleeping around with different people, to make sure that she pays her bills and different things of that nature. So, excuse me. So, um, I'm not saying anything at that point. My mother is completely taking over the conversation. She's like, well, I haven't heard of that. I'm not sure what Sarah does when she's not around us, but um, Sarah, she is a part of our congregation, but we don't do anything like that. So now I'm feeling like kind of like at an all time low. I felt so confident and so beautiful um, as a young woman of, you know, this congregation. Um, it was my pride and joy um, growing up. So to hear this from this guy now, it kind of puts me into a sinking feeling um, like I don't want to be associated with this because if Sarah is doing what she's doing and as a result, people are associating her with a congregation that I'm a part of, and they're looking at it okay, so not only is Sarah doing these things, but anyone who goes to this congregation is also doing these things. Well, I'm a part of this congregation, so they could technically draw that conclusion. That's why he asked, like, do y'all do what Sarah does? So I'm feeling like I don't want to be a part of anything associated with Sarah where people have to ask that question. Um, and It was just crazy. I remember feeling like I didn't want to wear the uniformed clothes that I wore, and I didn't want to be a part of that congregation because um, people, like how many other people um, out there think that, I do what Sarah does. And my mother's like, well, I don't know whether that is um, truth or not, but I've never known that of her. And we certainly um, are not involved in anything like that. So, um, I can't, there's nothing that I can say to that because I don't even know if Sarah does that or not. There's nothing I can say about that. So she's like, but what I can say is that no, we don't do anything like that. So, they're like laughing and sniggling, those guys. I guess the owner of the shop, and or maybe they were just people that cut, hair. They were just barbers. Um, all the men in the shop were like sniggling and giggling, where we were concerned. I felt so disgusted I just wanted to go somewhere and rip off the clothes that represented the congregation and put on normal clothes, because at least that way, like, people don't know who I am. They don't know what I'm capable of. They won't just they can't just assume that I do what Sarah does, whatever the case may be. So that was a horrible experience. That led right to the point where um, I had to make some major decisions. I had to decide if I was going to stay with it, or, if I was going to at some point, leave, whatever the case may be. Um, so then one day, I overheard my parents talking, and my mother was saying to my father, she's like, you know, um, we're going to have to start looking, for a suitor for Medina. Um, at some point, she'll be at the age where she has to marry. And we need to go ahead and kind of already have it established who is, going to marry her. I overheard this conversation. I don't think that I was supposed to, but she's like, when we do find the right person that's going to marry her, they're going to have to give us a dowry. Oh, yeah, they're definitely going to have to give us a dowry, whether it's land or, you know, um, land and property, um, because she's a virgin now and she will be a virgin at the time of marriage. They're going to have to offer us big time, you know, maybe close to $1 million in cash, um, and land, as well as, cattle and, property too, a couple of houses too. Um, so, like I said, I'm 16, and it doesn't sit well with me hearing that. Because when I hear them talking like that, and for the most part during that conversation, my father's kind of quiet, but he's not in disagreement with what my mother is saying. Um, I was hoping he would probably say, you know, um, I don't really agree. No, something to be in disagreement with the statement, something. But he didn't disagree. And they were just discussing this, and I was standing off somewhere. I think I was heading to my room, and their room was right by mine. So I heard them having this conversation. And she's like, it's going to have to be a really big dowry. We will help with the wedding, but they're going to have to cover the expenses. And they were just like mapping these things out. And that devastated me um, at that age. That traumatized me because I never heard her say, like, I think that she'll need a guy like this. I think that she'll like someone with this type of personality. I never heard her reference that at all. So, in my opinion, like, it didn't really matter um, if I would get along with the person or not, if I would love the person or not. It didn't matter. What mattered was the dowry, and just how big and how much it could be, based off the fact that I'm a virgin. Um, it was, it made me sit back and think, because at that point I felt like I felt like they were trying to sell me off to the highest bidder. Excuse me. That's how I felt. I really felt like I was possibly going to be sold off to the highest bidder. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how old, how young. It didn't matter. Um, there would be older men around, you know, and sometimes, my mother would say things like, "Oh, would you marry him?" And I'm like, "No, he's an old man." And she's just like, "Yeah, but he got a lot of money, you know." And at that age, I'm like, I don't care what he got. Like, I don't want him, but she's like, he's got a lot of money and, very faithful believer and very smart. He'll take care of you. And I'm just feeling like this is not, oh, excuse me, guys. I don't want this eyelash to, it's my real eyelash, but I don't want it to come off into my eye. There we go. I think that did it. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is my real eyelash, but I don't want it to come off into my eye because my eyes are very, very sensitive. Excuse me. So things like that leading up to me turning 17, my year, I had decided I'm going to beat them to the punch. I'm going to find someone to marry and settle down with before they have a chance to. It will be someone close to my liking, and they're not going to have a chance to sell me off to someone that I don't know, I don't like, I don't know if I like, just because they have lots of money. Like, no, I can't allow that to happen. And this is what I thought about daily. I thought about ways to, find someone that I would be, interested in before and hurry up and marry them before my parents found someone. So I felt like I was in the race of life. Now, instead of like my, friend girls looking for a boyfriend to be with and just go out and have fun with, I'm not looking for just a boyfriend to be with and go out and have fun with. I'm looking for a husband for real, for real. And I'm looking to settle down as quickly as possible. But I'm also looking for nice traits in a guy, intelligence, all of that. But I'm also willing to settle a little bit because, in my opinion, I'm thinking that any pick of mine will probably be better than one of theirs. Um, so eventually, I meet this guy, start talking to him. Um, he was, one of my, little boyfriends in high school. But I mean, I guess it depends on what you classify as a boyfriend, girlfriend, because everybody at that point in time classified a boyfriend, girlfriend as someone that you can kiss, you can go out with, you know, um, you hold hands, you possibly at some point will become intimate with them, different things like that. Well, it's not that I didn't want to hold hands and at least kiss. I wasn't trying to um, give away my virginity until I found someone I was going to settle down with. So even with the holding hands and kissing, they wanted to go out like I had explained before in another video. And I couldn't go out. I couldn't go out with guys. They wouldn't allow it. My parents would not allow it. Um, so the most I could do is see them at school. I wasn't opposed to hugging and possibly kissing at some point. Um, but that didn't seem like enough, for the guys. So I do remember like one day, um, me being after school, because sometimes I would, you know, um, run on the track, not run, but walk fast on the track, or exercise and work out with the girls basketball team to stay fit. Um, it was different activities like that, or step team, different things. Um, and the guy that I was going with, he was on the football and the basketball team. So I happened to see him. I was on my way, you know, um, heading down to where the girls' basketball team practiced, at. They understood that I wasn't trying out for the basketball team, but that I was just merely doing what they did workout wise, to, um, get fit, which I was somewhat small framed, in high school. So I just didn't want to get big. I didn't want to become overweight. And I wanted to look really nice, by the time it was time to come around to, prom time and things like that. So the guy that I'm talking to, he's like, hey, what are you doing here? And I told him, well, I'm with the girls basketball team. I'm just, trying to stay fit, things like that. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, I'm here for, football practice or whatever. But I left some of, my workout gear at home, and I'm about to go get it. You want to ride with me? Now, I could never even think about or imagine leaving the school. Um, my parents simply would not allow things like that. And I didn't even try it because I was afraid of them and what they would do. And I had the wrath of God that I was afraid of also. So, but I'm getting older. So he's asking me, and by now I'm 17. He's asking me, you want to, go with me? You could just sit in the car. Yeah, I'm just going to, get my things. So I'm like, well, okay, I'll ride with you. You know, this is in my opinion and based off of what he said. I'm not getting out or anything. I'm just, riding along. So um, I go with him, and I'm like, where's your house? He's like, it's right across the street. So I'm like, okay. So I ride with him to his house, and I'm sitting in the car, and he pulls up, he turns off the car. He's like, you want to come in? And I'm like, no, I thought I was just sitting outside. And he's like, I mean, but do you want to come in? And I'm like, not really, you know. We discussed me sitting outside. I'm going to sit outside. And he's like, well, I wanted you to see my house. I wanted you to see my room. And I'm like, well, it's okay. Maybe I'll, look at it at another time. Excuse me, my throat gets dry. So he's like, do you want to come in? I'm like, is your mom home? He's like, no, she's at work. And I'm like, well, no, then I'm definitely not coming in. And he's like, I just wanted you to see my room. And I'm like, I'll have to see it another time. Like, and he's like, you sure? You sure you don't want to come in? I'm like, I'm sure. And he's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. You know, because like it doesn't even feel right. Like you're trying to get me killed. Like um by my parents who don't play. Excuse me. So I'm like, no, I'm not going in there. Um, they've already versed me on what can happen between a boy and a girl when they're alone and teen pregnancy and all these other things. And I'm scared to death. And I'm scared, most importantly, of disappointing God. So, no, you're not getting me in that house. So he's like, all right, whatever. So he goes and he stays in there for a length of time. And I'm like, gosh, what's taking him so long? At some point, like 15, 20 minutes later, he comes out. And I'm like, I thought you only had to run in for one thing. And he's like, I told you you could come in, keep me company while I was looking for it. You know, I didn't know how long, I didn't know where it was. Like, I had to take time to look for it. And I'm just like, ugh, like, part of me kind of wished that I stayed back at the school because I was sneaking to ride with him to his house. But because I knew I was just going to sit in the car, it didn't seem like a big deal to me. But now I'm panicking. Like, I hope my parents didn't come by the school, to watch me in practice. And, also, I'm like feeling the tension between us because I actually like him, but I'm feeling the tension, like, because I didn't go into the house, like, he's drifting away, like, he's losing interest in me because I didn't put out at that point in time in my life. Um, So it was just crazy the things that young girls think about, growing up when they're getting into that stage of crossing the threshold of, um, thinking more about sexuality and, um, if they have a boyfriend, he's putting pressure on them, different things of that nature. Well, sometimes on the way to, practices or our classes, he would hug me and give me a kiss. And um, I looked forward to that moment, just that moment alone. That's all I needed. I enjoyed that. That was my first contact, you know, um, physically like that, with a guy, just, the hugs and the kisses. Um, he, on the other hand, he was getting kind of frustrated. So he's like, all we do is walk to our different classes and I hug you and we kiss and then we go our separate ways and that's all we ever do. And like, why can't we do more than that? And I'm like, I'm not ready to do more than that. Like, I'm thinking he feels satisfied like I do, but apparently not. So I just, at some point, and it kind of broke my heart. Um, at some point, we kind of got into like a big argument and ended up kind of like just deciding not to see each other anymore. Um, and it's kind of the end of that. Well, one day I was counting on my parents not ever finding out until they came to deal with another situation regarding a racist teacher, and this racist teacher was a coach, and he physically pushed one of my friend girls out of his way, and she fell to the ground. And we found out later that she was expecting, also, she was pregnant. And my parents came to deal with that situation, and they were threatening to, possibly get the news involved if that coach wasn't, let go from the school, whatever the situation was. The principal was trying to work with them, and he's like, we don't need news here, we're going to suspend him. They ended up suspending the coach without pay. I mean, with pay, actually. They ended up suspending that coach with pay. So it wasn't really a punishment to him after all. So right before my parents decided to take it to the next level, possibly, to court or to to the news, whatever the case may be, the principal called my father in. And he said, I want you to look at something. He showed him the video camera recordings of the hallways and me and my, at the time, boyfriend walking through the halls, holding hands, and then kissing right before I go my separate way. He goes his separate way. Well, he was devastated, very disappointed in me, and he felt some type of way. He could barely speak to me, barely look at me. I felt like I had let them down, like I had let God down, because, it was said to me, like, you don't just have to worry about us, you have to worry about the wrath of God, and God sees all. And when you disappoint him, it's on a whole nother level. Like you can incur chastisement. But at the same time, I also felt like, to an extent, like I'm getting older and this may not be my last boyfriend because remember, I'm on a quest. I'm on a quest to find the one. And so while I felt really bad about that situation, I still was like on some like I'm still, gonna be looking for that one to settle down with and marry before my parents can find someone for me. So that's the end of this video. Um, I'm gonna do another one in which um, I did somewhat dodge their plan, um, but it didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to or expected it to. So I'm gonna come back with another video in just a moment. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I'm interested to know what you have to say about that. Have any of you ever experienced anything like that with your parents where you felt like you were having to run towards something more sooner than later? Because if you didn't, like it could end very badly for you. You felt pressured to because you felt like you had to do something for some reason. Um, Comments and questions down below. Um, Also like and subscribe, and I'll be right back with another video in just a